In January 2010, a coalition of CSOs made up of IRC Kenya and Uganda, Practical Action, Reconcile, Ochodi, Riam CSOs Moroto, and Copain began the implementation of cross-border peace project, which was supported by the European Union for a period of 2 years.
To undertake this effectively, we came up with setting benchmarks, which these benchmarks enabled us to identify the weaknesses and some of the gaps that were existing, because the project came into play with clear knowledge that there have been other activities going on. So this we did through a baseline survey, which helped us to identify the gaps and also identify weaknesses within these institutions.
This project is a combination of very small steps and approaches that basically lead to a much greater thing. In this case, it is peace.
The Karamoja, Turkana, and West Pokot region, straddling the border between Kenya and Uganda, is a region that suffers from different forms of conflict. They include inter-ethnic, intra- and inter-clan, and cross-border cattle raiding and banditry, which are both aggravated by deep economic and social insecurity.
Let's not forget that if we're talking about cattle raiding, we're talking about livelihood issues. And if we're talking about that, what does that mean in terms of the approaches that we're taking, especially for challenging environment and contexts such as Turkana, Pokot, and Karamoja?
Livelihood opportunities beyond pastoralism are limited due to erratic rainfall patterns. This project was responding to the conflict in the Karamoja, Turkana, and Pokot regions of Kenya and Uganda to engage the communities in addressing the impact of the conflict, which has adversely affected their livelihoods and development. While the conflict is deeply rooted in the region, a well-coordinated and long-term intervention by the communities, governments, civil society, and development partners could collaborate for successful mitigation and transformation. The primary objective of this project was to strengthen the capacities of civil society in Karamoja, Turkana, and Pokot regions of Uganda and Kenya to prevent and resolve conflicts.
Prior to the commencement of this project, we had a number of security issues or security concerns that were very serious. For example, the level of raids, cattle rustling, was too high. The level of road ambushes were too high. Now, the level at which the various community members interact with each other was really very less.
The project was therefore designed to benefit a number of cross-border communities together with district peace committees, human rights groups, women and youth groups, and regional networks or coalitions working in the Kenya-Uganda Karamoja cluster region. Government officers and security agencies were also targeted. To achieve its objective, the project was implemented in different phases. A baseline survey to set the benchmark was conducted in Kenya and Uganda. Critical findings from this process laid the foundation for establishment of peace committees and other capacity building activities. The survey also informed the design of support to ensure sustainable peace by addressing capacity constraints of peace structures. Key activities were community empowerment, capacity building and partnership, advocacy and regional engagement between different CSOs, human rights groups, district peace committees, and government institutions, thereby contributing to lasting peace and an enabling environment for development.
We had specific interventions that we wanted to see so that we could strengthen the capacities of civil societies, human rights organizations, and also restructure and strengthen capacities of the communities to intervene, mitigate against conflict.
One of the key strategies introduced was the restructuring and strengthening of capacities of peace committees to intervene in community peace and conflict resolutions. As a result, 16 committees in Kenya and another 16 in Uganda have been supported. The second part was the creation of micro-projects to provide alternative forms of livelihood and establishment of regional coalition to support in advocacy and policy influencing by lobbying government and elected leaders. The ERDHR has put in place micro-projects such as maize grinding mills at meeting points and joint markets, which has increased interaction between communities.
This is a joint market of Nakapelimoru. Nakapelimoru is bordering Mazeniko and Turkana.
The project had a component of micro project that was basically to financially build the capacity of these peace structures to be able to carry out some of these interventions by themselves. So as we go along, we would say that more and more effort should be put on social enterprise development amongst these community grassroots structures so that they're able to stand by themselves and be able to implement these activities by themselves.
The project has also created strategic linkages as follow-up mechanisms for the different levels of peace committees to ensure that there is synergy between them. Thus, some kind of restructuring of the committees was done. Other stakeholders from the CSOs, human rights, women and youth groups have also been identified and linked to the DPCs. Introducing new ideas and ways of conflict resolution meant that a lot of awareness and sensitization had to be done with communities in project areas and all the civil society groups. Through meetings, trainings and workshops, the Karamoja Network for Peace and Development was embraced to ensure sustainability of the project and also to ensure high-level advocacy opportunities, including regional engagements. Community-based organizations, CBOs, have also benefited from the capacity building and skills building. They were taught how to form effective networks and coalitions, how to identify advocacy issues, and work with government authorities on developing and implementing them. Women and youth who were previously not consulted were brought on board.
And we realized that yes, the leadership of women, or including women, has brought about some power balance and some form of dignity in the group. At least they hold the respect. The fact that by virtue of the men respecting those in power who are holding that, they can influence some issues about women, and everyone else is considered at the grassroots level.
2 community advocates identified from amongst the DPCs and CSOs have been trained in effective advocacy. Their role is to engage in lobbying government, elected leaders, corporate companies, and other stakeholders.
As civil society, it is very important to work with government at all levels. We have made government appreciate that actually peace building, it does not just stop at them disarming or deploying the army elsewhere, but it is more than that. Actually, this has come out through the different kind of engagements we have had with the army and the communities, building that trust with the community, to see the army or the police as stakeholders or as partners in peace building, other than seeing them as peacekeepers in the place.
There have been a lot of peace dialogues, inter-ethnic peace dialogues in the Karamoja cluster through the peace actors. There have been a lot of peace committees that have been put in place that have been able to work together bring communities together. As we talk now, we have very positive alliances.
But because the project came as a coalition involving the two countries, we were able to meet the stakeholders from Uganda, the government stakeholders from Uganda, and the peace building partners from Uganda. So that enabled us as a government to borrow a lot from our counterparts, more so on areas on disarmament.
It has assisted by sending the message to the warring communities to understand the need to live peacefully among us themselves. That's what I can say, that this particular initiative has really assisted us. And in fact, we are experiencing that.
In summary, key milestones of the project include capacity development for district peace committees and engaging local civil society organizations and government institutions in peace building at community level, local CSOs being enabled to engage in peace-related activities with better skills, joint action by all stakeholders responding to early warning systems in tracking and recovery of stolen animals, and developing community-based interventions in promoting sustainable peace. There are a number of improvements with regards to not only the security situation, but also improvement in outcomes of peace-building interventions that were attributed to different project partners. Communities and clans are now able to jointly monitor thefts and raids of livestock within their respective communities as well as across the international borders, unlike in the past when most livestock thefts and raids would go without any effort being made to try and recover raided animals. More than ever before, efforts to foster good relations between communities have paid off through increased interactions in markets, joint kraals, as well as villages.
Yeah, this kraal actually has not been here for the last 10 years. Maybe if I may say, this is the first time since 2001 when the pastoralists GA and Mateniko and Bokora have grazed on this belt. This is a good grazing land which has not been used for the last 10 years, just mainly because of the insecurity which was here, mainly the cattle rustling, and the fact that the three communities could not come together to sort out their differences in order to exploit these natural resources. And right now here, as we are here on the eastern side of the road, we have the Mateniko grazing there, and on the western side you have the GA grazing on the other side.
In both Uganda and Kenya, there were not only increasing calls, but also actions for communities to forge stronger alliances through the traditionally sanctioned peace accords. Many of these efforts were facilitated by different project partners. Permanent peace efforts have also been witnessed in different activities, including the cleansing ceremony at Kalor Wako Mall on 18th January 2011 and the Lokiriama Peace Commemoration attended by representatives from Ethiopia and South Sudan.
So I would say confidently that the commencement of this project and the subsequent implementation of various activities, we have realized a lot of, I call it relative peace.
In this first phase, there was some level of investment in capacity building to help different groups to understand and interact with policy and policy processes. For me, this needs to continue. Capacity building on policy and policy processes and how to engage with different actors in influencing the thinking, the formulation and the implementation of policy.
I think so far we have managed to mitigate and even decrease some of the conflict issues, but it's hard to attribute that success just to us because I believe it is in combination and in partnership not just between the partners who were part of this project, but actually in relationship with the government officials, with other international and local NGOs that were critical to us basically achieving what we have.
Mari,